Hey, this is Kritikalmotion from the Chiefs, and we're back for episode 2, where we're going to level up your game in PUBG. Today, we're focusing on communication, which is insanely important in PUBG. Like in any game, communication is almost number one. There's lots of ways in PUBG that you can communicate things, even if you don't have a microphone, which is really important. One of the most important ways to communicate in PUBG is actually the ping system. And the ping system is where when the ping is activated, there is a marker put on the compass, which you can see at the top. So it's the 320, where I'm directly looking at this tree. And I am blue, so it's blue. The ping will go wherever you're aiming at the time when you press the button. And it will be accurate wherever your teammates are standing, and also for yourself. So as I move around, you can see that the ping is still on the tree. Ping, or quick marker as it's called in the keybinds, is something that's just really important to have bound to something that you can quickly press. As you can see here, I actually have it as an alternate bind on mouse 1, which is shoot as well. So every time I shoot, I am putting a ping down. So if I'm running through the forest with my team, and there's someone in this tree and I just start shooting at them, there is immediately some form of communication to everyone, even if I don't say anything. They don't last forever, but assuming the firefight is prolonged, you're gonna keep shooting, so the marker will keep coming up. This is also helpful if there's multiple targets, so even if there's multiple people in front of me, like there's a guy here, and then there's someone over here, the ping will switch as well. So your teammates are always going to know what you're looking and shooting at. Sometimes you obviously don't want to shoot though. So if you're sneaking up on someone, and they haven't seen you yet, and you want to tell your teammates where they are, you can also just use your other keybind. So in this case, it's T for me, and you can do it without shooting. It doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with enemies either. You could be just suggesting that you go somewhere. Alternatively to the ping system, there's also now a new squads command system. Will come up like this when you hold the key, but we're going to focus today on the fact that you can actually put a marker down on the map from this system. So you can now actually just double click your key for the radio wheel, and it will put a marker down on the map where you're looking. If there's someone running in my vision over here, I can just double tap, and they can immediately either look on the map or on the mini map, and it's an extremely powerful tool to communicate. The amount of information you can give someone just off a keybind is insane. While it is very powerful, obviously the limit of 300 meters means you can't just be constantly spamming this thing. You would then have to rely on actually using the compass, which is a little bit more old school now, but obviously still one of the best ways to communicate in the game. Sometimes you don't have the ability to ping. Situations say you're holding this compound and you can hear gunshots to the 210. You can't actually you can ping this wall, but it's just not ideal. If your teammate's over here, it's gonna be the completely wrong direction for them. Verbal communication is obviously very powerful, but when you combine it with the ping system, it just makes it so much easier. The alternative marker system we already talked about is also very useful, because sometimes there's just multiple objects that your team could be pinging. So my team is currently pinging these guys at the rock, but if I haven't actually spotted them yet, or I'm struggling to see them, they can also use the marker system, which they are currently using, which is actually putting a marker down on the map on the specific rock. If I haven't spotted this guy, if he's in more cover, I just immediately know where to look. Even if their pings, they have to start shooting someone else to the southeast or something, they've already put a marker down on the rock, so it just makes it so much easier to communicate. So with these tools available, communication becomes much more simple, and it comes down to then how you are in the moment. So when there is something that needs to be said, or you need a call that a player has a certain gun, like a Car 9, so you have to watch out for being headshot, that stuff's gonna come through much clearer, because you're no longer you don't have to constantly spam over voice comms. There's a guy south, there's a guy south. Yeah, it's definitely very important to be calm on communications. Some competitive players are still very loud and shouting, but it's generally still controlled and people aren't getting stressed. Everything I've just said about being clear and concise is going to be extremely important in Red Bull Fight or Flight, because the circles and the zones are going to be much faster. So it's very important that you and your team utilize the ping and marker system. so that everything can be much more streamlined in a much faster game mode. Now, it's extremely important to be calling your utility usage. If you're throwing a smoke down on your team to help them out, you need to call it, because they might think it's a grenade otherwise. It can create very panicked situations when they hear a grenade landing next to them. If you're throwing grenades at the enemy, they need to know that they're your grenades as well. Otherwise, things can get very confusing. If it's actually a third team pushing them and throwing grenades, it gives you a lot of information. There's no reason for grenades to be blowing up on the enemy team unless they're coming from your team, because it tells you that there's a whole nother team that you don't know about yet. So that's my tips for communication in PUBG, and I hope it helps you out. If you missed episode 1, make sure you go back and get some tips on how to land and what's important to loot. Coming up on episode 3, we'll be talking about aiming and everything to do with your sensitivity and how to be the best mechanical player you can be. For more details on Red Bull Fight or Flight, you can check out the link below.